Okay, thanks for being here, guys. Very excited to announce Jim Schwartz as our defensive coordinator. Coach Schwartz's resume speaks for itself. He's somebody that I have a ton of respect for. We did not know each other personally really before this process, but we have a lot of mutual friends, and I've admired his career from afar. Has done it at a high level, at multiple stops, and just pleased that we really believe he's the guy to lead our defense. And we're excited to add him to our staff, excited to add him to the organization and the wealth of knowledge that he can bring to this group, including myself. So excited to announce Coach Schwartz, and the floor is Coach Schwartz's now.
Thank you. You're going to have to give me just a quarter of a second here when I see Dino's picture on the back wall right there. Dino set up me buying my first ever sofa in the NFL. I'd finally got on full time with the Browns, and I was trying to furnish an apartment other than stuff that was at the dumpster, and he set me up with what was old Glue Fingers. Dante Lavelle had a furniture shop, and I went down and got a sofa that somebody had ordered and then didn't like when they took delivery, and it was sitting. He sold it to me for nothing. But yeah, Dino meant a lot to me early in my career. I used to sit out and practice and talk to him, and it's awesome to see his name up here and to come full circle that way. So anyway, sorry for that personal note.
I'm Tom Withers from the AP. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, what did those few years here with the Browns do in terms of kind of a stepping stone into your NFL career?
Well, I coached in college for 4 years before, and I grew up in Baltimore. I was a blue-collar kid. My parents didn't go to college. We were NFL fans. We weren't college football fans. So in the back of my mind, I always aspired to the NFL, but trying to get in was, a different story. So being able to get here, I started off as an unpaid intern, and I was driving people to the airport, and I was getting cigarettes for secretaries and filing papers. But I also got to be a fly on the wall and listen to Bill Belichick and Nick Saban and Scott O'Brien and Kirk Ferentz and, gosh, you name it. It was just unbelievable. And I was young. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a family. I lived here at the office. And even though I have a degree from Georgetown, I got my degree in footballology. I mean, PhD in footballology from the Browns and from Bill Belichick, and it was just awesome. I was mainly in scouting, but we wore a lot of different hats. And as long as you had a good work ethic and you were willing to learn and you could keep your mouth shut, you could learn an awful lot. And I was pretty good at all three of those things. It really made a difference. It took me a long time. It probably took me 10 years in the NFL to become an overnight sensation. But the years that I spent here was the basis for everything that happened to me later. And, whether it was my exposure to football operations or scouting or, talking about Dino with media or, anything else, it all went back to the 3 years that I spent in this building. The building has changed a whole lot, but, I think the ghosts have all stayed here.
How did you get introduced to Belichick? Who set that interview up?
Yeah, Steve did. I was at Colgate. I was coaching linebackers as a limited earnings coach, and one of our coaches had coached at Navy. And he knew I wanted to get into the NFL, and we were at the coaches convention one year, and Steve Belichick was there, and he introduced me to Steve. And Steve introduced me to Bill, and it lasted about, a conversation with Bill would lasted about 5 seconds. Hi, nice to meet you. And that was it. And then maybe 4 or 5 months later, I got a call asking me to come in for an unpaid internship. And, that was sort of, I say my biggest break, but I was very fortunate to be in that position and fortunate to be in a building that had so much talent. You don't know it at the time that, Nick Saban's going to go on to be maybe the greatest ever college football coach, and Bill Belichick going to be maybe the greatest ever NFL football coach, and, just all those other guys. But again, if you had a sharp pencil and kept your mouth shut, kept your ears open, you could learn an awful lot, and I did. So I had really no relationship with anybody other than Steve, who said, you know, a guy I worked with at Navy recommended this guy. I think you should talk to him, and you know, that was my connection.
3 years. Did they ever pay you while you were here?
Oh yeah, yeah. My first year I worked for free. Lived at the end of the airport runway over there, so I couldn't sleep in, and I couldn't go to bed too soon. I just got used to the trains again last night. Blow that horn over every crossing. I got to get used to that again. But it was a great experience for a young coach, a young professional in the NFL. You know, your focus, again, it was like grad school. It was like a PhD program. Every waking moment was about the club, and just, you know, I don't think I've ever told Nick this story, but when Nick went off to be the head coach at Michigan State, I helped him pack up his office, and back then you were packing these big, thick playbooks and all this different stuff. Well, anyway, Nick left one of his binders. I think it was maybe from the '92 season. He left after the '94 season, I think. And it had and Nick was meticulous, just fabulous coach and preparation. Basically, all 16 games and his notes from beginning of the week to end of the week, and his post-game notes. And it was all right there. And he had just left it behind because, you know, he had the other 2 years. Well, I sort of grabbed that and had it. And I tell you what, I can't tell you how much I referred to that over my years, particularly my first years as a coordinator, and just trying to copy the process that Nick went through, and you know, looked and see the way. It didn't matter what opponent it was or what schemes. It was more about the process. And yeah, so how did that question get started? I forget. I'm sorry. I can. Oh yeah. So my first year I made nothing, and then yeah, I think by the time I was done, I was up to about $20,000 a year. So I was feeling good about myself. I was feeling good about myself at the end.
Jim, my name's Nate Ulrich. I'm with the Akron Beacon Journal. I worked with Marla Ridenour for a long time, like so many of us did.
Oh yeah.
You know, she would kill me if I didn't ask you about this. So, one of her favorite NFL stories is you talking about Bill and the turkey sandwich.
Oh God, that has to come up.
Have you thought about that at all? And
yeah, Bill doesn't like that story. So yeah, it's for you guys that don't know. So I get hired as an unpaid intern. It's mini camp, and you know, mini camp is like Tuesday through Friday. But sort of the old thing back then was on Friday. On Thursday, you called the team up and said, hey, look, if we have a good practice today, you guys are off tomorrow. And then they all go out and give it the heroic effort, and everybody be gone. Well, my plane ticket, I had just been hired like a couple days before, and I'm picking up guys at the airport and shuttling them back, and I'm checking off names at lunch and all that stuff. And my flight doesn't go back until like, you know, whatever, 9 o'clock on Friday night. So it's a ghost town here. There is nobody here. This whole building is empty. Everybody's gone fishing for the summer, but I got nothing else to do, so I'm here. And back then they used to have kitchens that had food, and you know, I sort of root through. It's the middle of the afternoon, and I root through, and there's some turkey, and I'd make a nice little turkey sandwich, use the rest of the turkey, and I get my little crackers and have my drink, and I'm sitting there now. The whole day I hadn't seen a soul. There was not one person in the building the entire day. It's just me. Put my little pictures up on my little cubicle area. I didn't even have an office. It was like a desk. And just as I'm biting into this turkey sandwich, in comes Bill. And it was obvious he had been working the whole day, but he was holed up in his office. And I'd barely even met him. I'm just having my turkey sandwich, and he's, you know, just gives it, you know, hey, how's it going? Well, you know, I'm fine, coach, you know, so I'm doing this. And he goes, opens the refrigerator and starts like opening the drawers and looking, and he looks over at me, he goes, hey, you seen the turkey? And I was like, I just used the last of it, coach. And, you know, and he just sort of gives me this, you know, this bad look, and just shakes his head and says something under his breath and leaves. And I'm just like, I called home afterwards. It's like, hey, my flight arrives at 9:30, and I might not have a return flight after that. But I don't know that the interesting part of that whole story was how much attention to detail Bill had with everything that went on in the building and what his work ethic was. Everybody else was gone, and I'm sure Bill could have been off to Nantucket the next day, but he was grinding out that next day. And it was important that, you know, there was food in there for guys that were working. And, you know, all that stuff was just, you learn about cover two, and you learn about blitz, and you learn about formation tendencies and all that stuff. But just those kind of things I've carried probably with me a little bit longer in my career. Every little thing that touches the team, every little thing you do matters. And a lot of times it's the work behind the scenes that means the most. You know, it's not, working where everybody can see you. It's those times where, where you're alone in your office and you don't think there's anybody else there. That's the stuff that makes a difference.
Back in the building since the end of the '95 season?
Yeah, I've been back a few times. It's changed quite a bit, obviously. It changed. I guess in '90. When did the team come back? 2000, 99. It changed then. It's changed a lot now. I mean, the outside thing looks the same. The footprint seems about the same, but I'm still, tonight. I just got here last night, and probably tonight about 8 o'clock at night when everybody's gone, I'm going to walk around the building probably a dozen times and try to figure my way around so I can get a little bit of ease of operation. It's a great facility. I've been around a bunch of them. It's a great facility. It makes it easy to be able to do your work as a coach, and it's really a tribute to ownership, the capital improvements they've made for not just the coaches but for the players. And I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like it's a good place to come to work, and it makes it easy to do your job.
Is this job attractive to you? Why did you want to come out of what they, kind of described as sort of semi-retirement?
Yeah, well, a couple years ago I had some health issues. My thyroid, not to bore you guys, and probably maybe not for too much for print, but my thyroid went kaput a couple years ago, and it took the greater part of about 18 months to get my numbers to where they needed to be, and it's well controlled. But like I went through a year, I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours. Was either too hot or too cold. My poor wife, I'd freeze her out with the air condition, and then walk around with a winter coat on, and the next day. And I had some eye surgeries because of some vision stuff due to it. But as soon as we got the numbers straight, it's a little bit of a moving target. Anyway, boring. Once I got that straightened out, I just couldn't. I had one doctor tell me one time, and I said, like, look, I get really wicked headaches from watching film because I got some double vision. And his solution was, well, don't watch so much film. And I couldn't cheat the game. I couldn't cheat the game. I couldn't give a substandard performance. It wasn't fair to the organization. It wasn't fair to the players. It wasn't fair to the other guys on the coaching. It was a very difficult decision, but I'd step away. And and the Titans and Mike Vrabel were very gracious to give me an opportunity to still contribute while I was, sort of dealing with that stuff. But, I feel good. I'm ready to go again. Attractive here. I think it always starts with ownership. I've seen a lot of different ownerships, but I appreciate hands-on ownership. I appreciate owners that are willing to make the improvements / capital improvements in order to be successful. I see that here. And then you just start, I had a little bit of a relationship with Andrew Berry from Philadelphia, and knew the way he thought and how smart he was and his long-range vision. And when he was in Philly, I used to, in the back of my mind, I don't know that I ever told him this, it'll probably be news to him, but always had in the back of my mind, man, that's a guy I'd like to work with again. And that's sort of my idea of a GM, just unflappable, the same all the time, didn't get too high, didn't get too, us coaches, we can get emotional. It's hard to wear a loss. Sometimes we get a little too high after a win, but that's not Andrew. He's straight down the middle, and I have a lot of respect for that consistency and things like that. And then with Kevin, we had met each other over the years and gone head to head a couple times, but really my attraction with him was we came up the same way in the NFL. You know, he started from the bottom like I did and worked his way up incrementally over the time, and I have a lot of respect for that. I have a lot of guys that can persevere through some tough times, and they don't feel like they're advancing as quick as other people are, but they just do the work. You know, they just do the work and they get ready. And, you know, when it came his time to be a coordinator, he shined and all that work paid off. And when he came the head coach, he shined and all that hard work paid off. So I have a lot of respect for that. And, you know, I think if any of those three hadn't been in place, maybe it wouldn't have been attractive. But those three pieces made it a very attractive job, you know, not just for me, but I think around the league.
Do you think you can get 2 or 3 sacks out of Myles Garrett?
Well, we're going to work real hard at it, and he's going to play his part. You know, I've been very fortunate over my career to be blessed with some really good defensive linemen. And we run a very D-line friendly scheme that eliminates a lot of conflict for those guys. And we were able to play guys off of that, and we sort of let those guys go and be disruptive. And I know this, over the course of my career, I've talked to a lot of offensive coaches. I've talked to a lot of quarterbacks over the years. And the way you affect the game the most in this league is by pass rush. And, you know, it's hard to win in coverage. You know, the rules have changed. They make it hard to put hands on guys, illegal contacts, ICTDH, you know, DPI, all those things. It's hard, and these guys, these wide receivers are freak shows. But, you know, you can still win one-on-one on pass rush, and a devastating pass rush goes a long way. You can create turnovers off a pass rush. And if you can rush with 4, it allows your blitz game to be so much more effective because you start blitzing on your terms as opposed to on the offense's terms. You know, you don't have to blitz just to get pressure. You can blitz based on the situation, based on the personnel, as opposed to being forced to blitz to get pressure. And, you know, whether going back my first years in Tennessee of having Javon Curse and Kevin Carter and then Haynesworth and Vanden Bosch and all those guys in between, and, you know, the guys I had in Detroit and Buffalo, man, we had a crowd in Buffalo. You know, Philly just ended up having 4 double-digit sackers. I think we would have if Kyle Williams missed, I think, 3 or 4 games with a high ankle. He was we have 3 double-digit sackers up front. We hardly ever had to blitz to get pressure. You know, Philadelphia, we based it the same way. So we're going to put a lot of emphasis on pass rush, and Myles is a guy, you know, when I was in Detroit, we always knew that every defensive plan started with how do we keep Calvin Johnson from taking this game over, right? That was job one. How do we keep that? And then it allowed you to play it different ways, and, you know, you knew they were going to do stuff to take him away. But, you know, I think that every offense we'll play will probably start with that. How do we neutralize Myles Garrett, and how do we keep him from wrecking this game? And it's my job to give him some answers and to be able to put some pieces scheme-wise and personnel-wise around him to allow him to be free and more productive. And when I say more productive, what, 14 and a half seconds? See, yeah, okay, well, I stand corrected. Yeah, and that answers your question. The bar is set really high for a good reason. So.
To the next position, Jim, what do you need out of linebackers, body size? I mean, there's a lot made about the weight of some of these guys here. Do you need a bigger body linebacker in your room?
Yeah, we've played with a lot of different style guys over the time. I think the things that make the most difference when it comes to linebackers is instincts and communication ability and explosiveness. I played with some guys that have been in their low 220s. In Tennessee, David Long is outstanding. He's 215 pounds. You know, there have been plenty of guys in the NFL that played light. You know, go back to Derek Brooks and, you know, remember him coming out as a safety, as a linebacker, and, you know, but he just was a cobra and he could strike. And, you know, I've seen some 250-pound guys that didn't have a physical presence on the field. And I've seen some guys in their 215s or 220s that did, But I think it falls to the other things. It comes from toughness and instincts and explosiveness and the ability to play fast and think quick. And I would say this: I've had a lot of defenses over the years, and since 2001, and some of them have been real good, not all of them have. But the thing I've taken the most pride from is when people say that we play fast and aggressive. Now, again, okay, I'm sitting up here. There's not one defense coordinator that's going to come up and say we want to play slow and soft. Hey, look, we're looking to be dumb, slow, and soft. Everybody wants to be smart, fast, and physical, but it just doesn't happen. There's a way that you can facilitate that, and I've sort of learned that over the years. And if you see our linebackers here, if I'm doing a good job, they're playing fast and physical, and there's not a lot of hesitation in their play. And when that's all said and done, it doesn't matter if they're 200 pounds or 250 pounds. Let's not get above 250. Let's try to keep it below that.
I'm Ashley Bastock with Cleveland.com. I wanted to ask you about your staff and your philosophy when it comes to building a staff. What are you looking for, and how quickly do you hope to move on that?
Well, it's not my staff. It's Kevin's staff, and he's hired me to be the defense coordinator. So that's all I can really say there. I've had, over the years, I've had jobs, like when I got hired in Philadelphia as defense coordinator, I was the last guy hired, and I had never worked with any of the coaches before. We got up to speed pretty quickly and flipped that defense pretty quickly and won the Super Bowl the next year. Buffalo was similar. I've also had where I've had a lot of input, and so I've done it a lot of different ways. But when it's all said and done, that's Kevin's job, along with Andrew, along with the Haslams. They're the people that are making staffing decisions, not me. My job, I would say this: like there is a player component to coaching players. I think I'm pretty good at coaching coaches into what they're being asked to do and how it fits in with what we're going to do. I think I've developed that over the years. I wasn't always good at it. I was probably pretty crappy at it early. But, as you do it for a while, you get good at that and being able to coach the coaches into what we do. And maybe it's a little different than they've done before. I think that I can bring that to the equation. But I'd let Kevin answer those other questions.
How familiar are you with the defensive roster here, and how much research did you do prior to the interview?
Yeah, a little bit. It happened pretty quickly after the season, so I probably didn't do as much. But I looked at enough games, I think, that I had at least a little opinion of what happened. But I was in Tennessee last year, so we'll keep an open mind, we'll keep an open slate, and what we'll do and what players will play will really be dependent on how they do in the off-season program and what they look like in OTAs and how we develop in training camp. It's not going to be based on what happened last year.
Bailey Burmaster, Cleveland 19 News. I'm curious how you approach communication and accountability, especially when maybe there's conflict within players who may not agree with philosophy or an angle you take. How do you view those situations?
Well, I think that all starts with trust. And players, I've said this over the years, players really don't care if you're young, old, if you're black, white, if you're loud, if you're quiet. If you can help them, they'll listen. And if they know you're coming from an honest spot and you're telling them the truth, they might not like what you say, but they'll take it because they know that it's coming from a performance base and it's coming from the truth. So establishing trust is job one. So that's probably the biggest thing. Being able to put things that they do in perspective, even historical perspective, and be able to say, hey, look, this worked for this player in the past. I think this can help. So I think that kind of communication, is important when it comes to dealing with players, and again, it's stuff that you learn over the years. may he rest in peace, but the guy I learned the most from and how to handle players and how to deal with players was Gunther Cunningham. And I worked with Gunn. Gunn was my linebacker coach when I was in Tennessee, my first year as a coordinator. And, you know, just watching him, he had been a head coach, he had been a coordinator, and just watching the way that, you know, he could just lay waste to a guy and then turn around and walk off the field and be laughing and hugging the guy because it was all performance to Gunn. You know, it had nothing to do with, you know, knowing his wife or his kids. And the guys knew that. And they took a lot of, I don't want to say solace isn't the right word, but they took a lot of confidence in the fact that he was, you know, it was business. You know, it didn't have any, and he wasn't, you know, he wasn't going to pull a punch because it was a favorite player, and he wasn't going to be hard on a guy because, you know, he maybe didn't like the guy as much. You know, it was about performance and just that way that he had. I learned an awful lot. I've learned a lot from guys over the years of just how to connect with guys. And at this point in my career, I probably spend more time doing that than actually, you know, doing schemes. You know, scheme-wise, there's probably not a whole lot that we'll do here that, you know, high school coach probably couldn't draw up just as good. But that's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is getting guys playing together and that accountability that goes into it. And I would say this, if I'm doing a good job, we'll hold our best players the most accountable. And if you start from that position, then everything else is gravy. But if you don't hold your best players most accountable, then you can have some bad vibes and, you know, different things can go on because, you know, they know like, hey, you're coaching that guy because he's an undrafted. You said that to him because he's an undrafted free agent as opposed to a high first-round draft pick or a high-priced free agent or a veteran player. You know, if I'm doing a good job here, you know, we'll coach the undrafted free agent the same way we do the veteran player that's been to multiple Pro Bowls. And you know, when the other players see you do that, you know, I think it gives them confidence. And you know, like I said, you hold your best players the most accountable. It also gives those guys a little bit of pride in knowing that you know, they're coached the same way. I had a really good story. Malcolm Jenkins is one of my favorite players I've ever coached. Smartest guy. I mean, he'd go the whole year without making a mistake. He could play 7 different positions, and I used him as a sounding board on a lot of things. And you know, his information meant a lot. You know, his ears on the field. He could come off the field and say, "Hey, we're having trouble with that," or you know, things that you know maybe you don't know because you're not out there. And just trusted him, you know, so much and doing all those things. And we played a game one time. We just coming off the Super Bowl, and we played a game down in Tampa, and he sort of cheated on a play early in the game. Might have been the first play, and we gave up a big play. Sort of cheated as opposed to try. He played. I know what he saw, and I know why he did it, but sort of went outside the scheme a little bit to cheat it, and gave up a big play, and sort of hung a corner out to dry. And you know, we don't show players up, and we don't. You won't see this with my guys. We went on, played the next play. So anyway, so Monday or Tuesday, we're getting ready for our meeting, and I pulled him aside before because he was a veteran player, and I said, you know, hey, Jenks, like, you know I got to get you for that play. You know, we're going to watch it in front of the group. You know I got to get you. And he said, don't you dare treat me like you would any other player. And that's a guy that, you know, I had incredible respect for, and his attention to detail was meticulous. His work ethic was unbelievable. His character, everything about that guy was just one of my favorite guys I've ever coached. But to hear him say that and say, you know, I was just trying to give him a heads up, like, you know, hey, look, it's coming, man, it's coming. I got to do it. You know, don't and just hear him say, like, no, I wouldn't want it any other way. You get guys like that, you can coach the hell out of them, and you'll have good leadership, and you'll have accountability. And you know, again, if I do a good job, then you know you'll see stuff like that.
Got time for 2 more. In researching your first year in Philadelphia, and you were trying to establish the culture and the way that you do things, it seems like they, you know, pushed back a little bit, or just really weren't maybe always ready for the stronger discipline that you brought. So just wondering, have you learned anything since then to come in any differently and get the lay of the land first, or are you just who you are and you'll be?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is, I mean, you do change with times. You find new ways to communicate. You learn from your mistakes. I'm sure articles you've written, you go back in '93 and look at some of your articles and you probably wince and you say, boy, I screwed that up. I do the same thing. You know, you learn from your failure. Failure is a wicked teacher. You know, it's a strong teacher. You don't learn, and some mistakes you have to make yourself. So, you know, your life is a cumulative whatever of the mistakes that you've made in the past. And again, sometimes it's easier to learn from mistakes. But anyway, but you also have to go with your fastball. You know, if you're always trying to throw junk, and you guys will find out I had a lot of baseball analogies. But, you know, you got a good fastball, well, trust it. Go bust them on the knuckles and make them hit 99. Don't speed their bat up by throwing too many change-ups. And part of it is being who you are and having the confidence to be who you are. And I think I've done that over the years. And like I said, there's plenty of ways to, work around things and everything. But if you're consistent, I think from a player, being a coach is a little bit like being a parent. You know, you have to be consistent. You have to, if you establish rules, you have to enforce them. And kids take a lot of their cues from that, and I think players do too. And I've become less reactionary over the years. I'm pretty good at keeping my eye on that point on the horizon, and just keeping the boat like right on that point. And, you know, not paddling too hard on one side and going here and then going there, and then you're not making any progress. So I think I've improved that way over the years. I can still get after it, but maybe in a different way than I have in the past.
The last couple of years, first of all, I don't know how involved you were with the defense in Tennessee, and secondly, did you miss the action of being the coordinator during the game and that?
No, because, and I say this, I've enjoyed every role I've had in football, whether I was a graduate assistant or a position coach or unpaid intern or the head coach or the defense coordinator. I've enjoyed every bit of it. That's why I decided to make a career in football, is because I enjoyed every little aspect about it. My role was different. My job was to be a good mentor. My job was to give it an extra set of eyes. My job was to make suggestions and not be ruffled if they weren't acted on. My job was not to be the coordinator, but my job was to help the coordinator and help the position coaches, and maybe say, hey, look, you do it this way. I've had success doing it this way in the past. You might want to try this. So, I think I was still able to make a contribution. I'm incredibly grateful to Mike Vrabel for giving me the trust to do that, and to Shane for trusting me to do that. But they knew I didn't have any objective other than to help and to win. And, my job was to do a good job at the job they gave me, and that was that. So it was fulfilling.
We're all very bright people in here, so we talk about analytics a lot. You were kind of ahead of your time in the use of stats. I wonder how you feel that tool has evolved in the NFL, and is there too much information now available to coaches?
Well, I don't know that there's ever too much information. Any decision you want to make, more information is better. I do think it's the balancing act there is separating signal from noise. It's gleaning what's important and what helps make decisions and what helps put the players in position and not slow anybody down with that stuff. I mean, I think what's the saying, paralysis by analysis. I think that's a real thing. I think you can get a little too bogged up in that, but I'm a big fan of information, and all the information we're going to use whatever we can get. If it helps us to a decision, and it helps us streamline communication, and it allows players to play faster and coaches to coach better, I'm all for that stuff. And I did do a lot of that stuff here, but it wasn't anything new. Maybe it's under a different package now, and it's done a little bit different, but coaches have been using analytics as long as, as long as the ball's been pigskin and laced. There's been some version of analytics, but yeah, I think it's an important tool to help you to good decisions and help you to be more productive. And but like an artist, I do think that it's not always paint by numbers. That's never made a good artist. That sometimes you have to color outside the lines, and sometimes sometimes it's use some structure within what you're doing. And I'd say that that I've learned that. So, all right. So, sorry for the long-winded stuff, and I do want to say what an honor it is to be back in Northern Ohio here. And when the team left and went to Baltimore, I went with them, and we all knew that it wasn't the last. That Cleveland was going to see football. It wasn't goodbye. It was just so long till we see you again. And to be back amongst the passionate fans in the Midwest, it's you want to coach where fans are passionate. I've been very fortunate. I mean, Philadelphia, okay, check. We had that. Detroit, yes. Buffalo, I've had some great stops that way. Tennessee, so you embrace that part of it, and I think that's that's an important part of our process, and that's an important part of what the organization goes through. And I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to the fans here to get this right and to reward them, because I'll forget most plays of the Super Bowl that I was with the Eagles. I'll forget just about every play in that game, but what I won't forget is that parade afterwards. It's indelible in my mind. I'll never forget it. And in my mind, there's only one place that would outdo that parade in Philadelphia. And we're here right now. So I'm really excited about getting to work. And it's an honor to have Dino look over this proceeding, too. So thanks, guys.